Welcome to Michelle's Making. Hope you're ready for coffee, crafts, cookies, and cocktails. Let's get going.
Welcome and welcome back to those of you who are returning. I really do appreciate that. Today is National Anisette Day, the anise flavored liqueur. Maybe we'll incorporate that into our cocktail later. But in the meanwhile, we're going to get started with some funfetti creamer in our coffee. Enjoy that, get going, and make it a great day.
In honor of Anise Day, we're going to make some anise flavored cookies. For this recipe, you'll need flour, granulated sugar, brown sugar, baking soda, cream of tartar, salt, an egg, butter, and anise extract. We'll begin by creaming the butter and the sugars together. First the granulated sugar and then the brown sugar. Once that's well creamed, we'll add the anise extract and our egg. For this recipe, you will need to scrape the bowl frequently. It's a fairly thick dough. You can leave the mixer running while you're adding your ingredients, as long as you're careful that it's not running too high to flip everything out of the bowl, whether it's the dry ingredients or the liquid. But scraping the bowl frequently, creaming well with each addition, and then finally, after the egg and extract has been added, you're going to add your flour mixture. Now remember, with the flour mixture, if you don't have a sifter, you can stir in baking sodas, or if you were using baking powder, salt, and in this case, the cream of tartar as well. You're going to mix that all with a fork in the flour so that it's well distributed. The anise extract is a licorice flavor, and the smell of it is a very strong licorice smell. But in these cookies, it was a light taste. Once everything is well mixed, scrape the bowl down for a final time, forming all your dough together in the center in almost a ball shape. This dough will require refrigeration for 2 hours before baking the cookies. But once it has been refrigerated, you then can scoop out about a tablespoon, 2 tablespoon size ball and form it into sort of a round disc. It'll be a fairly thick disc, but you want it in a rounded shape. And you'll also dip those discs into granulated sugar before baking. You see, I had to swap out the container I had my granulated sugar in. It was quite a small little cup initially, and that wasn't really making it very easy to turn the dough around. So I switched it out for a larger container and continued on forming my cookies. Once I had the cookie sheet full, I baked them in an oven that was preheated to 350 degrees for about 10 minutes. You want to keep an eye on them towards the end because you want just a slight golden tinge around the edges of it. Now, if you're a black licorice lover, you could certainly add a little more of the anise extract so that you'll have a stronger licorice taste. But there we have it, our anise cookies. Our craft today is a planter box with hooks. This is a box that I had picked up at a thrift shop. It had the word welcome across the front, but I didn't want that on there, so I sanded it off. I also didn't want the decorative piece of twine that was across the front, so I did remove those staples and remove the twine. Now I did want the holes in it because once this is all said and done, I am going to thread some twine through there, and that is what I will hang this from, because this is actually going to hang in my front window. That in this remodel, we're redoing our bay window, and it's going to have hanging plants all throughout the windows. After I had sanded off welcome, it took off a lot of the stain, so I used my antique wax and gave it a light brushing. As you can see here later, I'm going to be adding some white chalk paint, and I really wanted it to look old and distressed. so I didn't want an even coat of the antique wax. I wanted it rather uneven. Next, I used a light brush technique using my Rust-Oleum chalk paint in linen white and went over the entire front of the box. I did end up taping off the little hooks before doing the bottom portion because I wanted them to stay rustic looking like they were. I did the sides as well, and actually I even turned it over and did the back of it because of where this is going to be hanging in the window. When you look from the outside, you would be able to see the back of it. So I thought it would be uniform looking if I did the same finish front, back, and sides. And my trusty heat gun helps the drying process so I can move on to the next step. I'm measuring the length of the box. I am going to create a decal with my Cricut that says the word blossom. I made the word out of red vinyl because red is the accent color that I'm using throughout my house right now. Once the decal was applied, I went over it with some Mod Podge just to seal it to the project. My plan is to use small hanging planters to hang one from each of the hooks, and then I'll also place some small plants in the little box. And there you have our planter box with hooks. The next little project I've got is a real quick and easy one. It's really just a paint job on this small metal tin that I had picked up at Dollar Tree. I really liked the way it had the letters on the side and they were slightly raised. So my plan is to give it a couple of coats of the Rust-Oleum chalk paint in linen white. Once that had dried, I used my acrylic craft paint in black and went around the edge at the top and the bottom. And the idea is to give this sort of the enameled look. The next job was to take my sanding block and to sand, especially around the letters, so that the words would become more prominent. Well, the chalk paint on this really did its job and stuck to the tin extremely well. So it was not easy sanding off that little bit. So I decided to use the black acrylic paint and go over the letters on the wording. And then I thought after I did that, I could sand it down a little more and kind of make that blend in a little more so it wouldn't look painted as much as it would look just the letters showing through from the paint. The wording was on both sides of the tin, but I did not use the paint to go over the other side. I decided to leave one with the painted letters sanded down and one without the painted letters sanded down. I did, however, have some chip marks in black along the side that I didn't paint the letters, and sanded that down as well, again to give it a kind of a distressed and old look. After the sanding, I did a little touch up with the black acrylic paint on the top and the bottom. And there's our garden planter. The next craft is a Hello Home sign. I do apologize that I didn't get a picture of this before I took the two pieces apart, but this is a little sign purchased at the Dollar Tree, and it had the little bird scene, spring scene on it like you saw there. And I just gave it a couple of coats of the Rust-Oleum chalk paint in linen white, and I did paint both sides of this half moon piece because my idea is to make this a reversible sign. So I took off the label. Again, that heat gun comes in handy. For the fall side of the sign, I began by stenciling the word fall in the center of the base. And I also stenciled a couple of leaves on each end. I will say that this process of stenciling did permit me to make a few mistakes, I guess is the way to put it. But I was able to get the paint off and fix it up. And with the leaves where it bled through, I actually took a marker and kind of a brown paint marker and kind of went around the edges of it and then touched it up with a little paint. And it ended up looking just fine because on the leaves I wanted and used a couple of different colors so that it would have some dimension. You can see here on the letter A is where I had some of my problem, but I was able to wipe the paint off and I used my sanding block to get the remnants of the paint as well. Now, using a stencil of the word hello, I positioned it on the half moon, and using Waverly chalk paint in the color pumpkin, I stenciled the word hello. For the leaves, I used a very pale yellow chalk paint and some more of the pumpkin chalk paint. And then, like I said, the brown paint pen to kind of do some outlining. On the flip side, I used the stencil again, and I used the black or the color ink chalk paint and stenciled on the word hello again. Once it had dried, I used my sanding block and gave it a light distressing across the wording and then also all along the edges. And there's our reversible Hello Home to Hello Fall sign. And now it's time for a refreshing adult beverage. How about a sour melon martini? This is a drink mixed over ice in the shaker while your glass is chilling. You'll need vodka, sour apple liqueur, melon liqueur, triple sec, and our Jose Cuervo ready to drink light margarita mix. As always, the full recipe will be in the description box, but everything goes into the shaker and you're going to shake, shake, shake until it's well chilled, and then pour it into your chilled martini glass. And the only thing left is to enjoy this delicious, refreshing sour melon martini.
Well, folks, that's it for another week. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really do appreciate that. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share with your family and friends, and please comment and let me know what you'd like to see. In the meanwhile, let's make it a great week. Don't forget to take time to stop and smell the coffee, and I'll see you next